Hello again. It seems like a while since we last spoke, even though I did do channel update 7.5 not that long ago. It just seems like a while, right? I normally do these updates about every 2 months, letting you know what's coming next and what's coming after that, and where the current thinking on the channel is. And what you might notice is that since we last spoke, I've developed a bit of an obsession with novelizations of my favourite, and possibly your favourite, 80s and 90s movies. And so now my bookshelf looks a little bit like a VHS collection from the time, which I think is awesome. I love this look. I'm going to keep buying these things. So, if you're watching the channel at the moment, you'll know we're just wrapping up The Terminator. And The Terminator was a really interesting novel to read. It's one of my favourite films, and I was intrigued to see if the novelisation played out the same as the movie. And it basically does. All the scenes you know from the movie, all the dialogue, everything that happens is nearly exactly the same. The thing that got me about it was it's about the longest book that we've read on the channel. And so an hour and a half of a movie has turned into over 10 hours in audiobook format, which I was quite shocked by. When I first looked at it, I thought this would be a nice short one. If you bear in mind that our usual Aliens and Predator, which is mostly what's on the channel, is about 6 hours per book, that's nearly, well, not quite nearly twice the length, but 10 hours is a lot longer, right? So a small movie turned into a massive book, but it was pretty much the same. There's probably only about 2 things in there different to the movie, not to put you off listening if you haven't already, but there's a scene set in the future where you find out a little bit more about the future and about John Connor, and then there's a different bit at the end. Now, that was really interesting to me. I'm going to spoil it a little bit here, but you may have read it by now or listened to it by now. But in the deleted scenes for The Terminator, originally there was a scene in which Sarah is stretchered out of the factory at the end, and the camera sort of pans out and you see the factory is Cyberdyne Systems. And that sort of explains how it was that Cyberdyne got so powerful, that they had the chip and the arm from the Terminator. Now that scene was left out in the movie, and when you look back at it, I can see why. Because if you've seen all the Terminator stuff, or at the very least Terminator 2, you know who Cyberdyne Systems are, and so that reveal was like, oh, it's Cyberdyne. But if you'd only ever seen the Terminator, I think Cyberdyne's mentioned like once. Reese says it's the Cyberdyne Systems Model 101. But if you weren't really tuned into that, seeing the Cyberdyne reveal, it wouldn't have really meant anything in 1984. Anyway, I was intrigued, is that going to be in this book? And it wasn't. But there is a different scene with a slightly different story that sets up how Cyberdyne came to be. So if nothing else, part 27, 28, I forget which way around it is, there's an extra bit that wasn't in the movie and it wasn't in the deleted scenes, it just wasn't there. Whether it was originally in the script or not, I don't know, because of course usually these authors are given the script at some stage and told, turn this into a novelisation. Now the Terminator feels like he had the script and he'd also seen the movie and just went with it, knowing how it looked on screen and making a good story with some sort of fleshing out. The next book, and I've currently recorded the first 8 parts of this, is The Predator. So I did promise I'd get back to doing some more Predator stuff. I didn't necessarily say it'd be the last book in that trilogy.
You said so. It's all bullshit.
But I did figure, hey, Predator, the novelisation, is a Predator book and is the sort of granddaddy of all the other Predator stuff we've read. So I started in with that because I'm loving these novelisations. This one is really interesting because where The Terminator is basically the movie in book format, just fleshed out, this has some real changes. There are some characters who come across very differently to what they are in the movie, and most confusing of all is the Predator. It is not the Predator we know from the movie. It's a really different entity that this author is explaining, which begs the question, did he have an early version of the script and that's what he worked off and he produced the novel with that? Because if he'd seen Predator and then did this, I don't know what he was doing. Now I know this sounds like I'm baiting you in a little bit to listen to it, but I recommend listening to it. It's going to be in about 19 parts when I span it out a little bit because it's choppy and changey on the length. So it's not going to be all month long. It's worth the listen. It is the Predator you know. It has the dialogue and the scenes you know. However, the dialogue is spanned out a bit. And some of the characters just speak and act a bit well, wrong if you're used to Predator, and the alien itself is just is a bit odd, right? But I recommend it. So Terminator is going to wrap up for October. November is going to be Predator. At some point, I'll probably get around to these. I know we're going very sci-fi heavy. Admittedly, Die Hard isn't sci-fi. The weird thing about Die Hard, if we ever get to this one, is that is not a novelization. I didn't know this, but Die Hard was based on a book.
I didn't get that message.
Maybe you should have put it on the bulletin board.
And so what they did was, when the movie Die Hard came out and did well, they just renamed the book to Die Hard and released it. So I'm intrigued to read this, because this isn't McClane, it's Joe Leyland. So they made a lot of changes. How many changes? We'll find out if we ever get to read that one. So October, November, but I did promise, and we'll get back to it, Aliens. I know everyone loves Aliens on this channel. We read the first of the trilogy, the Steve Perry trilogy, with Earthhive, which I know quite a few people have read. I know it's on the YouTube in a different format. And we're going to get to Nightmare Asylum, which I can't remember if it's on YouTube. And I promise next year we'll also do Female War, and we'll wrap up that trilogy of Hicks and Newt. Sorry, not Hicks and Newt.
I saw him as somebody that she could depend on, you know, somebody that was that she didn't have to be this like person who was completely independent of everybody else and didn't seem to care for anybody else and was like jaded and guarded and resentful of everybody around her. And I thought that what I represented somehow showed a softness in her, which I thought was important to the character, and I thought was great for the character. Obviously, they didn't think so.
Oh, that's right, Wilkes and Billy, because, you know, copyright and all that. Anyway, it was a good first book. I believe the first in that series is considered the weakest of the three, so if you enjoyed it, or even if you didn't, come back in December when we do Nightmare Asylum, where the story really picks up and we find what goes on with them going forward. Right, so exciting times ahead with novelizations. We've got 2, then we'll go to Aliens. What will we do in January? I'm still thinking novelization. I think Terminator 2. I wanted to do them in order, so Terminator will be done. Terminator 2 probably January. I'll see how I feel in the new year, and then we'll probably get to the Terminator spin-offs as the year goes on as well. So we've got a lot, quite a busy time. If you'd be interested in hearing the Die Hard book, the RoboCop book, or maybe even the Aliens novelization, do comment, let me know, because I'm trying to decide whether it's worth doing based on whether you guys would like to hear them read into audiobooks or not. So feedback is always welcome. Brilliant. Next update then will be after Christmas, possibly at this rate, or maybe just before Christmas I can drop in and say hi and Merry Christmas. See you then.
You're hit. You're bleeding, man.
I ain't got time to bleed.